that is accomplished by motion. A commissioner moves to appoint a certain person. That motion must be seconded. Once a valid motion and second are present on the table, a vote should be called. There are the opportunities to modify or amend motions, but I find it's much cleaner if we deal with individual motions as they arise and there's less confusion among the board members. So with that, there's not a whole lot more to go over here, unless you guys want to just jump right in.
I'll nominate Becky Bruning for chairman.
Okay,
But before we do that, since this is your first meeting, I would like to take the opportunity to maybe briefly introduce yourself to the public and to the staff too. And from my screen anyhow, I'll go around and introduce you. If you would give us a minute or two of your background and some of the things that highlight your great contributions to this commission. Commissioner Nick?
Yeah, I'm Richard Nick. I'm a retired Navy. I've been retired 15 years now. I work as a government contractor over at Point Mugu with the Point Mugu Sea Range Group. I've worked in government contracting for at least 15 years since I've been retired, but I also dealt with contracts and interaction with the public when I was in the military, both at Point Mugu and Port Hueneme. I've lived in Hueneme since 2008. I think we have one of the greatest little cities in the world. I'm very involved in the politics around me. I like to take an active interest and I like to take the time to make the world around me just a little bit better if I can by contributing what I can.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Rodriguez.
All right, mute. I'm Juliet Rodriguez. I've been a resident of Port Hueneme for approximately 12 years, 2 years off and on, and 10 years as a homeowner and resident. And I presently work for Ventura Regional Sanitation District, and I'm the clerk of the board. And I stay involved in my city in ways that I can, initially with the historical museum and also with our library, and find ways that I can give back to our community. So I'm very appreciative to be here. And I also would like to, if it's appropriate, share a disclosure. I actually had a conversation with one of our commissioners on July 24th about this subject matter, and for reasons of transparency and also not wanting to violate any open meeting policies, I just wanted to disclose that I had that conversation.
Thank you, Commissioner Rodriguez. Commissioner Downing.
Sir, you're on mute.
I'm glad I was on mute. I could start all over again. Let's see. I have been a resident of Port Hueneme since 1990. And I've owned my own business. I've never been a public servant except for when I was in the military in Vietnam. I pretty much brought the museum, which was in dire need of help, back. And it's taken quite a while. I started it out by myself. And now we've had just speakers on Saturdays. We have worked with the port in having different types of field trips. We have the grade schools coming over for with their classes and going through the museum, and that's part of it. I've been president of the Friends of the Bard. I've been secretary of our homeowners association here. I've been a past commander of the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and I've also been an aide de camp to the national commander of the VFW. I've on the House Committee of the VFW here in Port Hueneme, and that House Committee is in charge of saying, well, if you got an air conditioner, have you got the money, and then authorize and pay, projects to take place. I've been I was past board member of Southern California Floor Covering Association. I've been commander of the American Legion. I have, well, I've been in a number of different positions, but the basic thing is I came from private sector, and I was never a public servant for a long period of time. And I'd like to be on this because I think I'm, to survive at the museum, I've had to have some, meet some councilmen in the past that it was a challenge to keep quiet because they tended to be real roughshod over you. And I learned that I just need to walk the fine line down the middle, and that's the only thing that really works, not to get into any arguments or things like that. So I'm glad that I'm on this commission. I think I can bring good thought to it from my past in being president in a number of things and learning all my lessons. So that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bruning.
Hi, my name is Becky Bruning, and I have been a 62-year resident of Port Hueneme. My husband and I own our home. I have been very active with Friends of the Bard for the last 10 years as a past president and treasurer. I am also a volunteer at the Historical Museum in Hueneme. And I am proud to be part of this board, as I would like to see and make sure that the city continues to grow and be the friendly city by the sea that it has been as long as I've been a resident. Thank you.
Brad, you're on mute.
Thanks, Charles. Before we start into business item 1, I wanted to see if how many of you have a nominee for the chair position, so that we can focus on that particular nomination in order. So if you could just
point of order, Mr. City Manager, I believe I didn't introduce myself.
Oh, I apologize. I thought I got you. You switched spots on my screen. My apologies, sir.
So my name is Commissioner Stephen Auclair. I'm excited to be here. I was appointed with the original group, the most recent group, last July. I'm a community organizer here in Port Hueneme, highly involved, attend Board of Supervisors, City Council meetings, all of those, Water Board, why not? I hold a master's in educational leadership from CSU Channel Islands, focusing on policy and first generation Latinas, education and employment opportunities. I also served actually over 10 years in different policy advising positions, Brown Act bodies and others, including I did a term at Allen Hancock College as their student trustee governing the entire community college district. And so my work mainly has centered around issues of inclusion, environmental issues, as well as economic development. So with that, I'm excited to be here, and thank you, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Commissioner Auclair. I apologize for missing you on that round. Now, back, yes.
Before we go into agenda item or open up for the nominations as you were about to do, I wanted to disclose that we did receive a public comment regarding agenda item number 1.
Okay, if you would read that for us now.
Absolutely. The public comment was received from Mrs. Beverly Kelly and was stated, I nominate Juliet Rodriguez as chair. And I did send that to the entire commission, although I did advise them that it's not a public nomination process. It is amongst the members of the commission, the majority vote.
Thank you, City Clerk. With that, if you could just show me with a raised hand, if you have a nominee. Mr. Commissioner Downing was recognized. Anybody else with a nominee?
So we're ready? I'd like to nominate Becky Bruning
Uh,
as president.
Claire, did you have, I'm sorry, I just wanted to verify, did you have a nominee by any chance?
You're asking me?
No, Mr. O'Clair, Commissioner O'Clair?
I'm sorry. I'll yield to Larry. That was an earlier hand raise. Thank you.
Okay. With that, we recognize Commissioner Downing.
Yes, I'd like to nominate Becky Bruning as president of the group. I think she has enough experience in the area and is not into partisan politics, which I think we really need this first year. And I think she's more than qualified. She's a past, I think she was an RN. She's a past accountant, and she's a hard worker, and she's very reliable. So I'd like to nominate her.
I second the motion.
Commissioner Rodriguez is recognized for the second.
Yes, I agree with Mr. Downing and think that Ms. Bruning would be an excellent choice and very bipartisan, and I second that motion.
All right, so we have a motion for Commissioner Bruning. I apologize. We should do a roll call vote. So can we get Commissioner Auclair?
Aye.
Okay, Commissioner Bruning,
Aye.
Commissioner Downing,
Aye.
Commissioner Nick,
Aye.
and Commissioner Rodriguez.
Aye.
Okay, so the commissioner recognizes Chair Bruning. Motion carries unanimously.
Congratulations, Chair Bruning. I am going to turn this commission meeting over to you now. With the help of City Attorney and our City Clerk. I can assist as necessary.
Oh, wow.
Thank you, Larry, for the nomination. I guess the second item on our agenda is for the vice chair. And as the chairman, I would like to nominate Larry Downing as the vice chair.
All right, a nomination for Commissioner Downing for co-chair has been stated. Are there any other nominees from any of the commissioners?
Sure. I would like to nominate myself.
Actually, I was going to nominate Commissioner Auclair. I think his background in policy would be a big benefit to this commission.
Okay, so we have a second nominee for co-chair, Commissioner Auclair. Are there any other nominees to discuss? As City Attorney, would you facilitate the next steps and the final selection?
For sure. We have a motion on the table for Commissioner Downing. Do we have a second? So no second for Commissioner Downing as vice chair. That motion fails. We have a motion for Commissioner Auclair as vice chair. Do we have a second?
I believe it. Yeah. So I'll second on Commissioner Nick's nomination.
Okay, so we're assuming that Commissioner Nick made the nomination in the first place, so you're seconding Commissioner Nick's nomination? Okay.
Sure.
So
Or
we
vice
have-
versa, either way.
Yeah.
So we have-
Does that mean that we can second ourselves?
You can second your own nomination, yes, but you
All
can't
right, then I'd
your
second
own
myself. All right, I didn't make a motion. I second my own. There you go.
motion. Okay, so we have two motions seconded on here. This is the reason why I prefer to deal with one motion at a time. So we have a motion and a second for Commissioner Downing. Do we have a roll call vote in favor? So we're gonna have to go with the first motion on the table under the rules of procedure. So Commissioner Auclair,
No.
Chair Bruning,
Yes.
Commissioner Downing,
Yes.
Commissioner Nick,
No.
and Commissioner Rodriguez.
Yes.
We have a majority in favor of Commissioner Downing as vice chair. That motion passes.
Thanks, City Attorney. Congratulations, Co-Chair Downing. That leaves us with the final agenda item, and that is a policy document that City Council had asked for the Advisory Commission to review, reflect on, and make recommendations to advance towards approval at City Council. I do have a presentation. I know that
If I can interject, I think you skipped item number 3 for the draft bylaws.
Oh, great point. Thank you, City Clerk. So the third item on the agenda, Chair Bruning, is the bylaws. We are looking for a recommendation to either modify, adjust, make edits, amend as you desire, and provide a recommendation to City Council to accept and approve your bylaws. With that, I'll open that up to discussion with lead and led by Chair Bruning.
Chair Bruning, you're on mute.
Is that better?
Yes. we
Hello?
can hear you.
Okay. I have had a chance to look this over, and unless any of my fellow commissioners have anything that they would like to discuss, I say that we approve it the way it's written. Does anyone else have anything that they would like to add to this?
Yes, Madam Chair, I have several edits and a question for Mr. City Manager. So the first is a similar change throughout the document, and that is the use of in section 3.2, 3.3, etc., referring to chairs as chairpersons. I'm just wondering if that's consistent with other language that's used elsewhere. I noticed that in some of the documents, it only refers to them as chair. So I'm wondering if Mr. City Manager, if you can speak to that, and if it isn't consistent, I would recommend that we remove person and just have chair or vice chair throughout the document. And then my second question has to do with section 4.7 and its impact from the state order or in times of emergency or etc. So beginning with striking person, following chair, vice chair, etc. throughout the document.
In response to your question or inquiry, those are equitable in every sense of the use in that document and others, and they can be modified to resolve that particular issue you had. That's pretty easy. The second one is really a reflection on the current long-term impacts of a declared emergency, where by a variety of different things that would naturally occur in the course of an annual agenda by committees, councils, special councils, et cetera, are potentially significantly modified in execution, and that just allows for deviations under those conditions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. City Manager. I actually do have a third note on section 3.3 where it reads, to perform the duties of the chairperson in the event of his/her absence, resignation, or inability to perform his duties. I recommend that we remove the gendered language and restructure the sentence without changing the intent. So something along the lines of to perform the duties of chair or chairperson matters if we, of course, change it in the entire document. In the event of the chair's resignation, absence, resignation, or inability to perform the chair's duties.
That will be a correction that will be updated in the final draft that will go to City Council, as will the other recommendations that were made. Thank you, Commissioner Auclair.
Thank you, City Manager. And with that, that's my final recommendations. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any? Okay, not hearing any others with any recommendations. I would like to have a nomination.
I move to accept the bylaws as written and make the adjustments that Stephen's talking about. And then, okay,
Okay, do I have a second?
Point of order, Chair. The recommendation from staff was to approve a recommendation to City Council to formally adopt the bylaws. So I'm just wondering if Mr. Downing would restate it that way, his motion.
help me, Juliet. So I'm supposed to say, approve the bylaws to be placed in front of the City Council for final approval?
Approve the recommendation to City Council to formally adopt the commission's bylaws.
Yeah, okay, that's what I just said.
Okay.
Good.
And that would be subject to the recommended corrections by Commissioner Auclair.
Right.
Okay.
So do I have a second?
Second.
You
Oh.
made the motion.
All right, I know, Becky.
I'll
I'm sorry.
second it.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Okay, can we have a roll call vote?
Vice Chair Downing, Larry, you're on mute.
Beg your pardon. Aye.
Commissioner Nick,
Aye.
Commissioner Auclair,
Aye.
Commissioner Rodriguez,
Aye.
and Chair Bruning.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
So we will make the edits to the bylaws document and we'll prepare them for review and approval for City Council on 8 September. And that leads us to our actual final agenda item, and that is the Heroes History and Heritage draft policy document. I have a brief presentation that I gave to the council back in July. I figured I'd roll it back out again to again review it in person, but also to encourage areas of discussion as you see fit. By all means, feel free to ask questions. It's only about 9 or 10 slides. It's mainly the overview. You've had the draft document, and maybe this will fill in some of those areas that you did not have an opportunity to ask me in advance of this brief. So without going into too much detail, I'll refer back to the slides. So as several of you mentioned in your quick introductions, small city doing big things, the city by the sea, the nice, gentle, the kind, all those wonderful things that Port Wine it truly is, and we want to capture that obviously, and how we recognize the events of our history, our collective history in the city, and for those who made history by making an investment in time, energy, enthusiasm, knowledge and experience to advance our city to what it is today. So if you could give us the next slide, please. So really this particular policy was the product of a variety of different things. A confluence of factors back in June or so really excited a need to make sure that we get this right. The first issue was, a second failed attempt to recognize a former city council member and mayor, and part of the issues was really a process to have the public participate, but also to kind of assess the value of that contribution and how to best reflect our appreciation for it. The other thing that started happening is, starting on approximately the 20th of June, was a variety of different riots with across the country, where historic monuments and a variety of different other public recognition projects were being destroyed in the name of advancement, a name of a particular cause. And we wanted to make sure that those particular things were accounted for. But by and large, those things that we call monuments and memorials are physical, visual elements that help us bind our history and the things that we value to future generations as well as visitors. Next slide, please. So with that backdrop, we wanted to make sure that we applied a variety of different important objectives as we considered how we go about doing that. And so staff developed the document that you're reviewing today with the following objectives. The first one, we wanted to treat all people that of our historic past in a way that is equitable between the event and the person, and recognize the variation in value of all those contributions. We wanted this to be an open and transparent process, so that the project development was beyond personal agendas or political agendas, and it really metered out the historical value of those contributions. We wanted to, as a smaller city, we wanted to make sure that with the limited property and facilities that we have available to us to erect projects, memorials, those types of things, or recognize great service to our community, we needed to be very judicious in how we apply those recognition projects and memorials and monuments. We also, in order to have the city, the public, and the private components of this policy execution, we needed a way to organize and drive their efforts so that the selection process was repeatable and sustainable, and it achieved the objectives. One of the last two things are really one of the things that are overlooked in a variety of different programs across many cities we've reviewed, that once this project, this recognition is built, created, erected, we need to find a way to preserve that prestige and honor over time. And we need to do that in a way that honors the original contribution and the original recognition in perpetuity. And finally, the bigger thing is these things are not inexpensive. The maintenance costs are not inexpensive, depending on what it is. So we need to make sure that we account for the costs, both the initial costs as well as long-term costs of any project that is nominated. Next slide, please. So when we look at the variety of different city-owned public property that we have available to use for recognition projects, we took a limited but pretty, I guess, pretty consistent survey of the most prestigious areas or parks, public property that we have in our community. This is important only in the sense that if certain properties may be more prestigious than others when we do a recognition review and analysis. This is how it formed out. Now, all these things are subject to both public advisory commission as well as council restructuring, but those are the public properties that we have available for us to work with. Next slide, please. And the same thing with our facilities too. Some are already named, and we don't have any intention of changing their names. But these are the facilities that we have available to us in a similar ranking order. Next slide, please. We also thought it was advantageous to include events. You see two of them, an anniversary celebration. We did 70th. This would be the 75th coming up, and we have the Beach Festival, and there may be others too. And so we would like to apply that same process to how we name city-sponsored events in the future as well. Next slide, please. So these monuments, memorials, public art, other objects come in a variety of different forms. One is from the Navy base, a recent memorial for the gate at Sunkist Road. One is for the, again, this is a tragic memorial. It's a reflection and memory of those who lost their lives in the Alaska flight mishap. And the other ones are more of a historic recognition out on the beach. So we know and we understand that these forms of recognition can take on many, many, many different perspectives and design and those types of things. But we do need to try to be somewhat consistent, when we go through this process. Next slide, please. So in order to do that, a set of standards and process and procedure, it really is reflected in this draft document. Basic naming standard. Sometimes you can recognize somebody, but that may be for a limited period of time, or you can do rotational naming and use that as an option too. Something that's in the limited documents that we've seen from other cities that doesn't exist, but we've seen it at some kind of major monument locations in DC and Philadelphia and some other areas. How to initiate the project, how do you start a nomination process? And this policy document addresses that issue, and there's a nomination standardized package that would be submitted if approved. We want to make sure that the city staff does the initial screening so that the basic elements are satisfied, but before we hand this off in line to the next screening or filtering process, just to make sure that the candidates are eligible, the funding is available, and those type of things. And then the Citizen Advisory Commission would be the primary entity that we use to screen and develop recommendations to provide the City Council. Between that and the council action, we also want to make sure there's ample time and ample input for the public to comment and either support or tell us why that's not valid. Next slide, please. And then the final thing we added on there was more of a kind of an annual contribution, and that's to recognize somebody in the moment, in the now, for extraordinary community contributions. We see this every single day we drive about or we hear about things. All of you on this commission have clearly been a substantial contributor to the history and the well-being of the community. And just through your quick bios, it's clear that you were well deserving of an award of this nature. So we wanted to make sure that we do that as well. And we wanted to include it in this package. It's for an annual period. We also thought it may be important, since we haven't done this in the past, to allow grandfathering, so we may be able to do up to 5 years. I think past that, that would kind of lean itself towards kind of a separate recognition from previous elements of this policy document. And last slide, please. And with that, I will turn this over for your discussions and any questions you may have of staff. And by the way, all these pictures are from, and Larry probably knows this, but from Port Hueneme history.
Captain, I have a question. The Norton Sound Memorial is not listed anywhere there, and that is a memorial that was for the Norton Sound. You know, where they have that big anchor down there next to the museum.
Yes, sir. I didn't list all of the monuments that we have. Part of this document will be to register any things that have state historic registry meet that criteria, but also to do things and have a complete and thorough list of any and all past monuments that exist in the city, and there's plenty of them. You may have something over the museum, but within the city staff, search, we did not discover a comprehensive list other than obviously the naming of some of these buildings. But
I understand, Captain.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I have another question, Captain. Who's going to come up with the names to submit? Because that's where I think if it's the city council members, I'd fight you on that one, because I've seen too much of how the good old boy system comes into existence. And I wouldn't want that to happen.
Commissioner Dunn, that's a great question. And that is one of the other kind of background beauty pieces of this document. Anybody can nominate somebody for a memorial, as long as the correct criteria is satisfied. And it doesn't, it could originate from council, but it'll go through the same process as any other nominee. It could be an organization. It could be from somebody outside, the city perhaps, as long as they meet that criteria. So the nomination is open to anybody and encouraged for anybody that has somebody that or something that needs to be recognized and added to our hero history and heritage binding or bonding attempt through this policy.
I have a question for Mr. City Manager. There's several elements here that I have questions about. I guess first, contextually, thank you for giving some context to the ripeness of this and why exactly it's becoming before the commission today. So I would like just some clarity about the comps that were done, the comparables, and how the policy was formed. Did we look to the Southern California Association of Governments or peer organization, cities here in the county? Does any of the other cities have a comparable policy in place? And where do we align or differ consistent with that? Thank you.
We reviewed at least 20 different national, multiple state, multiple city policy. They were limited and very poor in almost all cases. That drove us to, there is an actual degree credential in the history and heritage. And so several doctoral papers were written on this thing. And so we reviewed UPenn, and that generally became the primary source of information, because it referred to a variety of different other park and monument sites in terms of how they considered arbitrated and in some cases neglected the important things to keep that history vibrant and current, but also on how these projects were erected. And so we did a national search. We used scholarly documents, and we also looked at a variety of different municipalities of the same size, and they were wholesale lacking in detail, as well as missing, I think, huge components that would have been exposed had they been targets of these anti-monument movements across the country.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Fellow commissioners, I do appreciate this policy. I think the stories we tell ourselves are particularly important, and ultimately that's what we're discussing here today with this policy is how do we regulate the stories we tell ourselves visually. So I do want to flag throughout, seeing how this is happening in time and place, as the city manager had mentioned. I think heritage might be a problematic word to use in this policy document. I'm not sure how it is used in the comps that we looked at. You know, the natural question would come, well, what heritage are we looking at and what heritage are we valuing versus, you know, something like honoring our past or honoring history could perhaps be a less loaded term. I think that's problematic in this document. I also had questions that we can discuss around section 3.2.2, which is the street renaming section. It just seems like there's an unusually high threshold there when it comes to requiring property owners to sign off on a street rename. And then finally, I had some comments around the Hero Award, and perhaps I would be interested in hearing from the commissioners about perhaps renaming it a Leadership Award. I think an annual hero award kind of waters down what is a hero versus a leadership award and how one contributes to our city. So those are my remarks. I'd be interested, I don't know, Mr. City Manager, if you want to reply to some of that, and then what my fellow commissioners think. Thank you.
I guess I'll go backwards since it's the freshest in my recollection. I'm not really married to any of those particular things. I will say that on the heroes, that was a term that was used in the past, and it linked up to Wainimi Hero. So I'm just blending kind of a vernacular when it comes to people that have standout service. A lot of times, and I don't particularly would apply leadership to it, but sometimes you know, heroes are not necessarily leading causes or leading events. Their energy, their enthusiasm inspire others to do greater things for their community. And sometimes it's not the leadership part of it, but it's the level of effort and the commitment to helping and supporting others less fortunate than them or more exposed and more vulnerable than them that really stands out. So I think hero is appropriate, but it's, and I think leader is less appropriate, but you know, that's for the commission to discuss and derive. Back to the street naming. Remember, when we rename a street, we are affecting people's addresses, where they get their utility bills, their bank statements, letters. It could also affect businesses too. And also, since we are a small city, a lot of our streets have you know, cross-boundary, cross-city extensions to them. So we recognize that there's not only an issue with the name, but also with the application of property owners who have addresses, whether they're business or residents, that have to, you know, make significant accommodations in order to make that happen.
I'd like to weigh in on that hero. One of the things that heroes do is inspire. I think if you can use the word inspiration award instead of hero directly, because we do throw hero around quite frequently, easily, and it does demean sometimes what we do consider, but an inspirer, an inspiration, I think is much more broad covering type of word to use.
I heard you, Commissioner. Is there Captain, can we come up with other options other than hero? And then we could talk about them whenever we meet again, because that'll probably take a little while. I understand why you're using Hero, but I do understand that they've been wearing it out, and it's kind of getting lost. And now I might go for Hero in the end, but could we get other better words?
I have right now, I have leader, I have a base root word of inspire, and I have hero. And so
Well, I don't know, Captain. I understand, Commissioner Nick. Inspire doesn't do anything for me, and leadership doesn't do anything for me. And I understand the argument on hero because I do agree with you. All I'm saying is Captain, is there a way that the staff could come up with some other options and we could just look at those? Because I'm not a brilliant person and I can't think of better words real fast.
Well, so one of the outcomes of this, this event today is to take your recommendations and move it to council to approve the document. I'll defer to city clerk on how we could, compile a variety of different name changes and kind of revisit this without necessarily disrupting the potential delivery of this product to the council on 8th September. City clerk or city attorney, do you have any recommendations?
Sir, my recommendation would be for us to go ahead and, if the commission recommends the majority of the entire policy, go ahead and push it forward through council and allow them the opportunity to submit. It would be more considered like public comments, but individual comments to the council prior to their September 8th decision. And then council could take into consideration any recommendations that they have prior to adopting the policy. That would be my recommendation.
I think that's fair.
Okay.
I would say, Madam Chair, that the Inspiration Award that does, as Commissioner Nick mentioned, I think that gets too closer to, what I was sharing, and as Commissioner Downing was mentioning, also just, while I have some academic disagreements on the use of leadership, and leadership itself is a whole field of study, right? My master's is in it. And that is that it's not connected to a position. However, perhaps the common use of the word is still pretty rigidly connected to a position. So I think inspiration gets closer to what my intent was in flagging that. Hero, I just often associate not like I feel like if we do it on an annual basis, we would feel compelled to fit somebody into a hero box. When I think hero, I think of like my cousins who went to Iraq, right? Or, first responders, or, Dolores Huerta or something, right? So that would be my feedback, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Well, between the inspirational and the leadership, I lean towards the inspirational.
While we're on this subject of these monuments, and you did bring up the protest against many that we have throughout our nation right at this current time. You talked about vetting and making sure they meet the criteria. Is part of that vetting process is to make sure that when we're vetting, not just the criteria that we're submitting it for, but also that we vet that there's not negative connotations that haven't been looked at, so we don't have that take place afterward.
Yeah, one of the challenges applied to the process that you would participate in is assuring that the character, integrity, moral courage, ethical considerations meet a baseline standard, so that we don't have issues like we see around the country. when it comes to recognizing somebody, and then at some future date being embarrassed when we discover that that may not be the bind to our community that we want. So there is that part of the filtering process inherent in this policy.
Okay, thank you.
And one other comment about heritage, and I apologize, Commissioner Auclair, that I failed to mention that when with your string of questions. Heritage is really a future state. We are looking for the heritage that we want to be proud of, and trying to make sure that the future state of the city resembles through our selection of nominees and projects that lives up to that aspirational heritage that we would like to take pride in as a city.
Captain, are they going to be bringing up the bards again for any of this? Because a lot of what I discovered in the museum and looking back is money can change history. And I'd like us to not step into that realm anymore. They've named enough buildings, the Bard Mansion, and they have the monuments all the way along the thing talking about Richard Bard, who really wasn't the guy that thought of putting the pier in. It was another fellow. It was a lighter. So yeah. I just want to be cautious on that one.
No, those are great points. There have been indications by the Standing Port Committee and certain commissioners on the port that certain aspects of the Bard history need to be better reflected in some of the the monuments that we have. There's a kind of a small one out here local to City Hall that it may not be as visible as some would think. So there's the option to move, redo those type of things in any of this policy.
But we're not going to be naming things any more things after them, right? We can go with what's there, right?
That's up to this commission, to be honest. This is one of the challenges that the city council is going to leave for you to do through this policy document, is this determine and recommend what should be either recognized more, recognized less, and then adopted and executed.
Chair Bruni, I would like to comment. I think this document in its title, Heroes, History, and Heritage, has a great alliteration in wording. However, I'm not sure if it's too broad an umbrella to encompass all of this, because in the document itself, it's to or groups for their ordinary community contributions, and to provide a connection between the historical and heritage. And I'm not sure you can really wrap both up with a bow. I think Commissioner Auclair had asked early on about defining heritage. Whose heritage are we referring to? In the presentation, we also had reference to having equitable treatment of historically significant events and people. And depending on who's telling the story, the history, that it's a challenge to have equity in that story. There's always going to be a protagonist and antagonist in telling the story, the history. So I think I think we need to think about trying to wrap everything up under one policy. And I agree with the, I guess the point being made on heroes and possibly changing that word. History and heritage, I think I would just like to see that defined a little bit more, because I think as we've talked about it today, our visions individually and collectively are very different on what the history and heritage are. And also during the presentation, we talked about present names of the library, Ray-Pruder Library, and also the community center, Orving Carpenter. But we also have had one we brought up two events. Our Hueneme Beach Festival has had a name for years. It was the Tony Young Beach Festival. And somehow former Mayor Young has kind of been lost in all of this history, and yet was significant enough that someone thought of naming this festival after her years ago. So I just want to make sure that as we look at this, the terminology we use, that it's defined, and then also that we look at, is this policy too broad? You know, do we want to look at people, how we identify people that are inspirational heroes, and then a policy as to how then we want to memorialize or honor them, because we do have, as was pointed out, limited city property that we can use. Those are my initial comments.
Well, just for the benefit of everybody, those particular discussions took place as we're reviewing and contemplating what this document should be and look like. You know, there's a danger of being too narrow. One of the dangers is that we potentially indict a former recipient of some type of memorial or honor, you know, through kind of narrow scripting of what those criteria and character is. So it was purposely, you know, allowed a maneuvering room for interpretation specific to this commission, so that we wouldn't necessarily be hand-tied in a very narrow scope of review. And the second part of it is the term, you know, mission, vision, values, culture are going to be reflective in the city's emerging, soon to be published or approved and published a strategic plan, which would be the pointer by which we would reflect back on what those things look like, our guide, if you will. And so there was a conscious attempt to avoid pinning those things down in advance of a strategic plan expected in September.
Chair Bruning, I also wanted to add, and thank you, Commissioner Rodriguez, wonderful points made. I do see reference here to various city plans and strategic plans. I don't think this commission has been given guidance on when we will view that. Certainly we will not be in the deliberation process because that period has now passed. I would feel more comfortable reviewing this document after feedback that the commissioners have given and Commissioner Rodriguez has highlighted. And once we've been briefed on the strategic plan, I think we can then see this in context to the larger picture of pending city planning. Thank you, Chair.
Hey, Captain, I came up, how about champion or star?
Commissioner Dunn, I can do a star, I can do champion.
I'm trying to think of different ways. Exemplars. Role models.
I think we
I'm
probably
just looking for different items. I just trying to come up with different ideas.
So in response to Commissioner Auclair's comments, this particular document, a policy document, is a process document, right? So we would use the framework of other things when they appear and apply that standard. And so this stands alone, allows you to apply the current standard. So it would work for the strategic plan that comes out in September 2020, but it also would advance forward and allow you to apply potentially a new standard with a strategic plan that comes out 10 years from now. So it was built for durability and sustainability, and it's not locked down to a specific document, but allows you to apply that standard whenever that document is updated. And I caution that, the move to narrow and specific makes it very, very, very difficult, and it gives you little or no maneuvering room or leverage to accommodate a variety of different potential candidates for nominations.
Hey guys, I got a question. Going back to the heroes thing, I don't want to wear this out. How would be luminary, exemplar, champion, role model? Any of those acceptable? So I'll keep looking. I guess not. No comment?
I think more of the sticking point right now is not necessarily that name alone. I think the heritage part is also one, because, and I understand we can beat around it, or we can say that, we are a fairly diverse city with a large makeup of ethnicities here, and one ethnicity's viewpoint could be very different than another ethnicity's viewpoint on what is, I guess, most prominent about this city or important to its historical value. So I do see the concern. I guess my question would be, when we formulated this document, I would hope that we had a very diverse group of people, had a lot of input into it, so that and that when we're vetting something, it is a very diverse group of people that are looking at these and vetting these naming of these documents.
Is that a question for city manager, or a comment for me that you let me know?
It's a general comment. Yeah, and it's for you, that we did use a very diverse group of people when we formulated this, and that when we vet something, we'll use a very diverse process. So we're making sure that we do see it from all the different perspectives.
Well, I guess the first thing was you applied ethnicity to heritage, and it's not really a ethnicity heritage element. It's mainly it's a values element. What makes us different? What asserts us and discriminates us from Oxnard, our neighbor, or other communities with a beach? And so, if you apply an ethnicity, help me here, ethnicity. Characteristic only, or attribute, then it would miss the mark as you described. So it's not bound by ethnicity. It's really an attribute of what makes us unique and different in this community.
Commissioner's Nick's point, I do agree, and again, the reason I flagged heritage is evidently both, Commissioner Rodriguez and Nick and I have, highlighted that that's an area where we need additional information and would like, I think, additional discussion. And again, how I like to frame it is, this whole idea is that the stories we tell ourselves, and I don't think it's a document that we necessarily need to rush through. It's important because we're setting up a process by which future commissions will be figuring out how to navigate the stories we tell ourselves. And to the point that Commissioner Nick brought up, certainly the stories we tell ourselves will be different. And one of the reasons I flagged it is when I, for example, as a Latino, when I read heritage, I view that as a dominant culture word that we need to just be aware of as a commission, and make sure that that's really the intent of the document, and that define the way in which we use heritage, to Commissioner Rodriguez's point, would be useful. So we're clear that this XYZ, whatever it is, the intent of the document that the city council ultimately adopts is clear to the average person.
And to touch on that, you did say that the heritage is what makes us different as a city, not based on ethnicity. And that, I think, defining that within this document is actually kind of important, because a lot of people, when they see heritage, their first thought is within their own construct. And I think that's why the definition has become so important.
I concur with Commissioner Nick on this, and something I had also previously that was including some of the definitions for the terminology and how we are defining heritage. Heritage, as we've been using it in the context of this document, is very different from heritage as it's defined in the dictionary. So, you know, if we are defining it, as you have said, setting something up for the future, then I think that just needs to be very clear, because I think right now that's not, that isn't clear in this document.
Okay, any more discussion?
And going back to something that Commissioner Auclair said, this the document actually did come up with bringing in, it says common cultural heritage. So it does make an effort to tie in cultural in with the heritage, which is why I think that there might be some thoughts to ethnicity and you know, and just different cultures. You know, I look at Hueneme, our very name comes from Native Americans, from Chumash, where it means resting place, you know, and we are a perfect resting place between Los Angeles and further north. So, you know, I just think going back, it's really important that we define heritage in the document.
Okay, so from my notes, there is a desire to change the word hero. I've got several great inputs from Commissioner Downing, and to be a little bit more reflective and narrow and defined when it comes to the term heritage, to avoid any instantaneous with ethnicity. Sorry, I have a hard time with that word today. I think I've addressed some of the other concerns, and other than those the two items, are there any other things that you would like to recommend for staff to accommodate before we move it to council?
I would just flag, as Commissioner Rodriguez shared, we just don't want to, I would just want to make sure that whatever naming, recognitions that we have done, that we make an inventory of that and respect it, or plan on it going through this process. You know, I see here, if I just search Tony Young Beach Festival, it looks like maybe the last time we held it was in 2014, and it was named in honor of our former mayor. So we just want to be mindful of that going forward. To Rodriguez's point. Thank you, Chair and City Manager.
Thank you for that comment, Commissioner Auclair. In the document, there is an attachment which has basically an inventory of every recognition project or element, naming whether it's an event or not. You can see it's blank, and we need to populate that document as you described. So on my list of things, I've got changed the hero award to something different, and I'll solicit inputs. Remember, this will be we'll go to public comment too, so there's the opportunity for that to the public to participate and maybe creating the term of Hueneme art, so to speak. And then to define heritage along those lines. So those are the things, and also to complete the inventory of our current list of monuments, events that have names, all that kind of thing. And with that, I think we are about ready to move forward with a action on a recommendation.
Does anyone have any recommendations moving on with this?
I would ask if the fellow commissioners feel comfortable with it going before council with those recommendations, or if we adopt it with recommendations, or if we would ask for it to come back to the commission before going to council.
Okay, so you're asking that they do it and then bring it back to us before it goes to council?
I think we can discuss, that as an option, or adopting it with the recommendations that the city manager had mentioned, and then it can go before council. But it looks like Commissioner Rodriguez might have something to say.
Well, thank you. I actually, having heard some of the comments made in the course of this meeting, I almost think a lot of staff work has gone into this document, and that's evident. And there was prior discussion to this before I was involved in this commission, but just before council and so forth. So I think someone pointed out earlier, I don't think we really want to rush this through. September 8th is coming up quickly. I mean, that's my birthday, and I think the best present you could give me is to actually put forth this document where we have not only vetted it with the public, but that we have really gone through and added some of the edits that have surfaced today, but have got a chance to review it so that we can present something to the council that we really fully stand behind and know that it's the best work of staff and it's been vetted and bought in by the community. And I think that's the very reason why we exist as a commission, is to give that. I think what you may be hearing from some of us is that we'd like to see it one more time.
Okay, does somebody want to make a nomination to that effect?
I'd like to know, Captain, do you have time if we go through this to bring it back? And do we have the time to do it?
Well, I just listed the things that I picked up as recommendations to improve. So a rewrite would include those, and that would be moved forward to council. There was an insinuation of a time pressure by council at previous meetings to figure out how to do this the right way. So there is a little bit of a time pressure. So from a staff perspective, I have 3 items that require thing. We spent a lot of time on this already. We've contemplated a variety of those things, and we accommodated them, within, within those areas of discussion that we already brought to the public. And so complete rewrite is not what I am picking up on. And so it would be mainly those type of things.
May I also contribute to that? If we did move forward for the September 8th meeting and whatever recommendation you supply for council, it would be posted as an agenda, and all commissioners would be available to provide public comments or any further comments. Once you'll see the rewrite as a posted agenda item, and you could supply further comments to council if you wish to do so.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, it will be published, have the same review time as all of the members of the public. And if the rewrite was not as you imagined, or you had further comments, you could certainly supply those to council prior to, and that would be delivered to them before the meeting.
I would like to make a motion based on what Commissioner Rodriguez spoke to. And it seems like we could have a special meeting with this one item to discuss it. And it looks like it'd be, just really 3 specific areas, either the week of the 30th or the week of the 23rd, but it looks like probably the week of the 3rd at some point, to Commissioner Rodriguez's point. So I'd like to make that motion, perhaps to have discussion if it's seconded, and then have a vote. Thank you.
Does anyone second that?
I will,
If I may seek some clarity on the motion that was made, does the motion include calling a special meeting? Is it being presented that this commission can in fact call a special meeting?
Yes, I mean, certainly we can look at the bylaws and see if that is permitted. But it seems like there is consensus among, well, my perception is several members are interested in more than just us giving individual public comment on it at the next city council meeting.
With respect to the bylaws are fairly clear that a special meeting of this commission can only be called by the city manager or the city council. So it would be an improper motion to make to set a special citizens advisory committee meeting. The authority with that would rest with the city manager or the city council exclusively.
So we then pretty much don't have any other option other than either approve it with recommendations and then make comments as an individual. It just seems like there's an artificial timeline being there, push it through in September. And I'm not entirely convinced that it's a ripe issue that must be addressed in one commission meeting. But thank you, Chair and City Manager, if you would like to add anything to that. It appears that our options here are limited. Thank you.
If I might, you do have the opportunity to provide that you do not recommend it move forward, that you request to be able to see again. You have the option to either move it forward or not. We would still move the process through council, but we'd either have your recommendation to move forward or recommendation to have more time, and then it would be up to council.
If we adopted it with changes that we asked for, would we be able to see that before the city council meeting, so that if we had questions to ask them, then we would be able to do so?
We can do it a couple of different ways. Number one, you can't necessarily collaborate on the document outside of this meeting,
Right.
outside of this commission meeting. But when I make the edits to it, I would send it out to each and every one of you, and you have the opportunity to engage me directly with any inputs that you may have. I sent this document to all of you about, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks ago. I did not receive any comments until today. That is the other alternative, is to create the edits, send it individually, and solicit individual non-collaborative responses to it.
Okay.
And then the final product would be the accommodation of those inputs from each of you.
And Chair Bruning, to further answer your question, the Brown Act requires every notice of meeting to be placed in advance 72 hours. So the fact of the matter is this document would be available to this committee as well as any member of the public who wishes to submit a comment 72 hours before the September 8th meeting.
Okay, thank you. So do I have anyone who wants to make a nomination to accept this with the advisements that have been made?
I make a motion that we go with this document with them making the changes and then just sending them back to us to see, and then we can go to city council if we didn't like it, okay? How's that?
How are you?
Is that simple?
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, do we do a roll call vote on this?
Yes, ma'am. Vice Chair Downing,
Here, aye.
Commissioner Nick,
Aye.
Commissioner Eau Claire,
No.
Commissioner Rodriguez. Ma'am, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. No.
And Chair Bruning.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-2.
Even though we passed that, I would like in the future that maybe we get a chance to see these documents a little bit ahead of time. I know that you said you sent it out to us.
Mhm.
I did not get it until I got an email from Christy, so I never saw it from you, just so you're aware.
Likewise.
The city manager sent out an email at least 2 weeks prior to the entire commission, a welcome introduction email. And when I sent out one of my responses, I had his email in its entirety below my email, just for reference.
Christie, I'll let you know, you sent it out. I had it. I looked at it and I figured, I have learned from this. I'm going to do a better job of reading it the next time. Okay.
Yeah, you'll see the entire city manager's email
Yeah.
below one of my correspondences with you.
Wasn't your fault. It was probably most of us didn't read it good enough.
Thank you, sir.
Christy or Madam City Clerk, I also ask that in the next email that we make clear what appropriate communication we can have with the city manager and providing feedback that's compliant with the Brown Act. So that would be useful to know the level to which we can communicate back feedback. So in the future, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I can let the city attorney jump in as well, but individual communication directly with the city manager is perfectly acceptable as long as you're not corresponding between the group of you and creating a quorum, or, sorry, a Brown Act violation, having serial meetings or communication with each other, but communicating directly with the city manager, I'll let the city attorney attest is acceptable.
It is, provided it doesn't rise to the level of serial meeting. I will prepare a short statement to include in Brad's next email to all of you, giving you a foundational understanding of the Brown Act.
Thank you. And Brad, I'll add you to my safe list.
I'm going to have to do that, Brad, because I don't know why I don't get your email. One, and I know you've probably sent me several, but the one you referenced was not one of them. Christie's emails I seem to always get.
So I'm in your spam folder?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't even think you made it to spam.
The first thing we'll do
Yeah,
is
because
we'll do a
I
comment check.
didn't
Thank
get
you.
it either, but I did get Christie's.
I thought you guys just didn't like me.
Evidently, you're going to the spam folder and you're just getting deleted.
We'll fix that. My apologies. My apologies. Everybody likes Christy.
And please feel free to reach out to me if you guys feel like you're not being communicated with, or that, you know, maybe you had missed something. Please feel free to email me anytime as well. I'm here for all of you.
Thank you, Christy.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
With
Chair.
that, Chair Bruning, I think, can we entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting? Unless staff have objections.
Does staff have anything else they need to discuss with us?
Now, City Manager, I will be right on a test email right after this this meeting adjourns.
Thank you.
Thank you for your indulgence.
Okay, if nobody has no other subjects to discuss, we are adjourned until around December 2020.
Have a great evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you.
Nice work, Commission.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Chair, Co-Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Captain.